What is going on, guys? This is Second and Short, the new, well, it's kind of old by now, but the improved NFL Draft coverage podcast right now. We cover everything NFL, but right now we're going to give out grades, quote unquote, for your favorite NFL teams. I am Tyler Lauder, joined with Aaron Benn. How you doing, my man?
Yo, yo, yo.
Never do that again. All right. But anyways, we've been going through all these divisions and we've been showing a lot of love to the AFC. And now it is time to head on over to the NFC. And we're going to move down to the South, the Dirty South. And with the Dirty South comes the Dirty Birds. And that's where we're going to start. But before we jump into the Atlanta Falcons, I want to clarify some things. We're giving you guys draft analysis, our breakdown on these players, what we think, if they're fits, if they did well. The grade part is just so you guys have some leverage on shitting on us. That's all we want. That's it. But Atlanta Falcons, we're on the clock here with them. Aaron, who did they draft in this draft?
The Falcons, they didn't have a whole lot of picks. They only had 6 picks. With their first rounder, they went ahead and got A.J. Terrell at cornerback from Clemson. The second round, the big old Marlon Davidson, defensive tackle from Auburn. And then big old guy, Balashoy. And then in the third round, they got Matt Hennessy, who plays center from Temple, who I was kind of hoping would go to Tennessee. Then Matt Hennessy would play for Tennessee. In the fourth round, they had 2 picks. They got Michael Walker, linebacker from Fresno State, and then Jalen Hawkins, the safety from Cal. And then in the 7th round, they took the kicker, Sterling Hofrichter, who some Falcons fans have taken to be calling a Hofricker, or David Hasselhoff, or any other variation of Hoff and Richter.
You know, with this draft class, it was very interesting because all 10 days right before the draft, all that was being told or said or tweeted about or fans were screaming from the rooftops on Reddit was that the Atlanta Falcons were a serious contender to trade up. Now, here's my thing. If you're a serious contender to trade up, you just make a trade. There's no sitting back, waiting, doing whatever. And I think the problem was that so many quarterbacks went early that top talent kept falling. Like Derek Brown fell to Carolina, Isaiah Simmons fell to the Arizona Cardinals, and then by number 9, the Falcons had nowhere to go, and because the Jags obviously wanted a cornerback. So if anything, the Falcons could be mad at the Chargers. That's whose fault this is for taking a quarterback. However, they sat back at 16. Let the dominoes fall the way they did, and they still came out with, in my eyes, a top 5 cornerback from this draft. And A.J. Terrell from Clemson, 6'1", 195, 200 pounds. The championship caliber cornerback. Talk about him a little bit though. Is he a good fit for this team?
Yeah, I mean, personality-wise and culture-wise, yes, is a hometown kid, grew up in Atlanta. Talent-wise, yeah, he's a good press man corner. He's got good agility, good footwork. He's patient. Doesn't jump too early on the ball or anything like that. He's good on those 50-50 balls, getting up and knocking the ball away from the receiver. The main knock that a lot of people have been saying is that he played in the ACC in Clemson, and that's kind of the default criticism for anyone who plays at a smaller school or a smaller conference. So I'm not too worried about that. He did get burned pretty badly by Jamar Chase in the championship game. But I mean, on the other hand, who didn't get burned by Jamar Chase last year? I mean, if
that guy right now is probably going to get drafted higher than any receiver this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted in the top 5 next year.
Yeah, if he came out this year, he would have been the number 1 receiver, probably without question. So not too worried about that. I think AJ Terrell will come in. He'll be that number one cornerback replacing Troutman, and I think he's a good fit for the team. But if we're talking about players that Falcons fans are really excited about, by far, like we did a poll on Reddit, and by far we had about 700 votes. Marlon Davidson had over 500 votes out of those 700. He's this massive defensive tackle. Also played snaps at defensive end. He's got great explosiveness off the edge, even being like over 300 pounds. Like there's a couple plays, like one against Alabama, where he just gets around the edge quick enough. Like he's got great speed who can just get around the tackles, but he's doing this at 320 pounds. The Falcons last year, they did have trouble setting the edge. Vic Beasley didn't turn out like they thought he would. And they brought in Dante Fowler to help out with that. But from what I've heard, from what I've read, Quinn, the head coach, is saying that he's going to play mostly defensive tackle. This guy, his speed he could blow by offensive guards who maybe aren't as quick, aren't as agile. And putting him there with Grady Jarrett will be terrifying. And then maybe that'll help bring up Takk McKinley's production as well. I think they could potentially have a very scary defensive line this coming season.
He got a big old amount of votes for that big old man that he is. And, he is one of those guys that I think would be better for them to shift out onto the edge of that defensive line. And in whatever formation they play, I think Dan Quinn is going to be able to bring the most out of this player here. But I do think that he has an ability to kick inside. Like, I think he's that good that realistically they can shift him around anywhere and he's going to have success. I mean, this guy is big. I mean, over 300 pounds and having the ability to rush the passer with such quickness, and like I keep saying, he's better around the edge. I think they need to stick him there. It'll be interesting to see where they put him, because I think where they put him will determine how much success he has in the pass rushing game. Because if you kick him inside, he's going to pick up more double teams. So I feel like either way, the Falcons are going to gain more sacks out of this pick. Either he's going to be doing it off the edge, or he's going to be setting the tone in the middle, picking up that extra blocker and letting guys like newly signed Fowler get some sacks on the edge. So either way, this is a tremendous pick for the Falcons.
Yeah, and in the NFL today, the name of the game is versatility. And as much as, like, the more you can do as a player and the more versatile you are, the more you're going to help your team and the more coaches are going to like you.
Yeah, 100%. Now, is there anybody that you think from, outside of these early day guys, there's got to be somebody that you kind of looked at from past the first two rounds?
I actually liked Matt Hennessy, the center that they took. He's expected to come in and like start right away because they have Alex Mack. What's interesting about Matt Hennessy is that he has basically modeled his game after Alex Mack. His offensive line coach in 2016 was Alex Mack's line coach at the Browns. So he's gotten some of the same coaching. He's modeled his game after him. He gets good leverage. He's a patient blocker. He's got good quick feet, good lateral quickness. The main knock on him is that he's a bit undersized, but I mean, if you're undersized but you play well, you're still going to be good. Like Jeff Saturday was also undersized as a center. I mean, he should be in position. Maybe he can start at guard if needed, but he should be in position to take over that center position in a couple of years, I guess.
While those first three picks are pretty awesome, what I liked about the Falcons draft is their ability to, throughout this whole process, it was all versatility. Like, I mean, AJ Terrell is going to profile as an outside cornerback. He's going to be their number one cornerback, replacing Troutman as soon as he's developed and he's ready. But everything after that, from 2, 3, and 4, all these guys have versatility where they can play multiple positions. And Michael Walker, who is going to be an inside linebacker potentially out of Fresno State, 6'3", 230. I mean, I've read some things on him where people say he's got adequate size. What do you mean adequate size? 6'3", 230. He's a big dude. He's a buff dude. He's strong. I like this pick because this guy at Fresno State played in a ton of positions. He played on the edge on the line. He played in a 3 technique. Plus he played up, standing straight up. He's played at linebacker, at outside and inside. He's played everywhere. That's a pro and a con. It's the same thing we were talking about with Isaiah Simmons. I'm not comparing the two. But he lacks dominant amount of reps and experience in one position. And that's like the one knock I have on him really. Is that he's going to be a linebacker in the NFL. He doesn't have a lot of experience at playing linebacker, and that's a problem for me. But he's got enough ability. He's a very hard worker. Very hard worker. He's a good tackler, and he's very explosive on his first step when he is going off the line. So in those packages where he blitzes as a linebacker, he's going to have the edge over some people. And he's very intelligent as well. I mean, in his career at Fresno State, he had 38 tackles for losses, 11 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, and 17 pass deflections. That's, for a guy that played on the line, off the line, everywhere, that's insane. And some of his best tape, too, is against teams like USC. From stuff I've been like looking at and checking. I mean, this guy played at a high level at Fresno State. He needs to work on some man coverage a little bit better. He does well in zone, but players can create separation off him. So if he lines up against a dominant tight end, like Zach Ertz, who's going to create tons of separation on him in the NFC, he's going to have issues. But otherwise, this is a very smart pick for the Falcons.
Yeah, and the Falcons do need help off the edge. Like we said, they're not very good sitting the edge last year. So if he can come in, produce on the edge, provide some versatility at other positions, it should work out pretty well for them.
And then last thing before we get out of here, I mean, Sterling Hoffrichter, it's very interesting to see where he's going to play for them because he was mainly a punter for Syracuse, but he did have 4 field goal attempts. He also does kickoffs. So, like, I know it's a kicker and it's special team stuff, but right there, we're just talking about the Falcons right now. And obviously what they were planning to do in this draft was get versatility. And that's what we see right there. Like, I know it's not going to happen in the NFL, but ideally, if I was a general manager or head coach and I could draft one guy to do my field goals, kickoffs, and punts, I would love to do. I'd pay him a little bit more than I pay a normal kicker. Like, I would love it.
Yeah, it'd save a roster spot.
Exactly, save a roster. I mean, some people roster, back a couple years ago, some people were rostering a kickoff specialist, a field goal kicker, and a punter. Not a lot of teams, but a couple.
Titans did that last year for a few games.
Exactly. I mean, wouldn't it be better if you could have like an extra offensive and defensive lineman? Like, that'd be so much better for rotations and everything. But overall, the Atlanta Falcons did a great job. Now, I think what hurts them a little bit for their draft grade that we're going to give them, which really is just a fictional, imaginary letter we throw in the air, is their inability to trade up and get the top 2 cornerbacks. Nothing against Terrell. I like him. He's in a profile as a good cornerback. I wanted him on a couple teams in the second round is what I thought he was going to fall. But I think if they could have pushed and been aggressive and moved up, they could have gotten a bigger impact corner who was more dominant man coverage.
Yeah, I also feel like they could have gotten edge a bit earlier. Like, I had even thought about them taking Caleb on Chase on with their first round pick.
Who fell right to their laps.
Yeah. So I think they could have taken a player like that. I know Davidson is supposed to play a bit on the edge as well, but I think they did need to address that pure edge rusher earlier in the draft.
Overall, though, Falcons fans, a very solid draft. They got 3 to 4 potential starters for them. which is always a key when you're drafted in these drafts, is to get starters, maybe more. It depends on how Walker pans out. And we didn't even talk about Jalen Hawkins, but this team gets a B grade, which nobody should be mad about. I've been seeing people get mad about these grades for like Bs. I'm sorry, a B is a great grade. I mean, you shouldn't be mad at a B because D's earn diplomas in high school and C's earn degrees in college. So if you get a B, you're doing all right. Alrighty, let's shift gears to somebody that the Falcons hate. And, this team would agree it's mutual. Let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. I kind of wish that like we were like 60 years old and like we could call them the Aints, and it would be like, back in my day, that's what we used to call them. The Saints were terrible, but you know what? This Saints team, ever since they got Drew Brees, they've been good, and there's nothing we can't deny that at all.
It's like how we'll be in the 30 years when the Browns are good, and then we'll be telling our kids like, oh, I remember when the Browns were terrible.
Exactly. It'll just be like the Detroit Lions have just won their third Super Bowl in a row. They once went 0-16. Like that's. But let's talk about these New Orleans Saints. Now the Saints here were in a position to get a very talented player wherever they went. There was really no limit to where they had to go, sitting at pick 24. I really thought they were going to take Jordan Love. As soon as the New England Patriots traded out and the Chargers traded up, I was like, oh, that's it. Jordan Love is going to go to the Saints. They're going to have their successor for Drew Brees. It didn't happen, though. They decided to go a different route. Cesar Ruiz. Now, this guy is probably the fourth. In my eyes, he was my fourth best offensive lineman. In most people, he's probably the fifth after the big four at tackle. But that's just because interior offensive line gets devalued compared to tackles.
Yeah, I mean, he was the top interior offensive lineman of the draft. He's can come in. He played snaps in college, mostly at center. Also played at guard. The assumption is he can play both positions in college in the NFL as well. And I think, I mean, where do you see him playing on the Saints? Because right now they have a pretty good offensive line right now.
They're crowded.
Yeah,
they're crowded right now.
I mean, they have Eric McCoy at center, who they drafted last year.
They traded up to get him. They moved up to get him in the second round.
They have Larry Warford already starting at guard. They have Andrus Peat. They gave him that big extension, so I'm kind of curious to see where he slots in right now. Where do you see him going?
Well, both those guys you just listed made the Pro Bowl at guard. So, for me, I think he's better than Larry Warford. That's just me. I think he's clearly better than him, but one's a pro coming off the Pro Bowl, a really good season for him, and he's getting up there in age. That's what makes this pick so puzzling. The New Orleans Saints had an opportunity here to get Drew Brees' successor. They had an opportunity here to draft the number 6 receiver. They could have taken a receiver right here and helped build this wide receiving crew even more. Because Emmanuel Sanders isn't the future wide receiver 2 across from Michael Thomas. They could have even went defensively, and kept bolstering that defensive line, strengthen that linebacker core. There was many options here that they could have done. Like guys like Patrick Queen were right there for him as well. I'm not saying the Saints need a linebacker as much as they needed a wide receiver or anything, but me personally, I thought they could have went a different direction. However, the player they get is very talented. So back to your question. I think he's in a slot in it at left guard. I personally do. I think he's going to take over that spot, and the Saints are going to... This is kind of like when we were talking about the Baltimore Ravens when they took J.K. Dobbins. They didn't really need to take him. But when you see a player of this caliber that has this much talent, this much versatility, that can come in and play all these positions, he's good for your team. And last year, the Saints kind of struggled in the run game compared to recent years. And that's where Ruiz specializes. He is a run blocker to the day he dies.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think, like looking at the picks who went before him, there's a lot of picks that maybe the Saints had their eye on, and then those didn't work out, so they just kind of went with the best player available. Like Kenneth Murray went the pick before them, and then at 21 and 22, the Eagles and Vikings took Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. Maybe those were their top guys, and then they just suddenly fell off the board, and they just kind of went with their next best guy on the board. So that could be what happened there. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what, maybe what their thought process was, but Ruiz is going to be a very great player for a long time in the NFL, no matter where he plays. He could move positions every single game between left guard, center, and right guard, and he's going to do well. He's going to do very well, and Alvin Kamara is going to be happy because now if an injury happens, they have 6 guys. They're 6 guys deep. And we keep saying Drew Brees is going to retire after this year. Maybe getting a younger guy than Larry Warford is going to be able to protect Brees for an extra year and give him a little more life. But it is a very odd pick.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what's also an odd pick, but for not the same reasons, is
flip the coin.
Their first third round pick. They had 2 third round picks. Their first third round pick at 74, they took Zach Bond, and it was just odd that he slid that far. I mean, I could see a lot of people had him going in the first. I kind of had like a early to mid second round grade on him. Seeing him slide all the way into the third, they could not resist the opportunity to jump on him at 74. Zach Bond he's kind of, I talked about him in our mock draft. He's a bit of a tweener. He's kind of undersized to play just edge. I'm not sure if he's a great fit for that defense, but the talent is there. Like, he is a first, second round talent. Got him in the third. He can come in. I think he'll be better as an off-ball linebacker, like an inside linebacker. And he even said, like, after getting drafted, he's talked to Sean Payton. He said he's willing to adapt. He's willing to play what they need. He's ready to learn. He's ready to do whatever it takes to help the team. He had great coaching at Wisconsin. Like, Wisconsin is where the Bwatt brothers went. That's where there's been a lot of like linebacker talent in the last few years. So I think he'll come in, and I think he'll be a contributor from day one on that team.
Yeah, and this speaks to what we keep talking about, that right now in the NFL, versatility is king. Like, if you want to, this is like the NFL right now is exactly what college kids graduating right now need to have in their toolbox, is like being able to do multiple different angles of the job that you want to move up the corporate ladder or whatever. But that's the NFL right now. Zach Bond, what he brings to the table is the fact that he can play in so many different positions, from the defensive line to standing straight up on the outside linebacker position. And he can show great support to his other players. I mean, this guy is relentless when he goes to the quarterback. He closes down very well in the open field. He isn't the best run defender, but then again, he plays on the outside. And then on this team, he might not have to, He's going to slot in, replacing AJ Klein for them, and he's going to be able to hopefully become a sponge. Because, I mean, he's got all-pro linebacker Demario Davis right there to just tell him and teach him everything he needs to know. He's got Cameron Jordan rushing the passer on the outside, He needs to look at those 2 guys and spend every single minute with those guys, because he has a lot of potential to be very good in the NFL. Let's talk about that other third-round pick they got.
First of all, I want to say they had just 4 picks this whole draft. Okay, so they had that first round. We've talked about 2 of them. The first 2 picks. They had another third-round pick, which I'll talk about in a second. And then they used their 7th-round pick on the quarterback, Tommy Stevens from Mississippi State. I don't think we'll get too in-depth on him. I'm not sure. But Adam Troutman is the tight end they took in with the 105th pick. He's from Dayton, a smaller school. He looks like he can kind of be that extra pass catcher that they're looking for. I know some people were wanting them to take a wide receiver in this draft. Adam Troutman's a good pass catching tight end. That's kind of mostly what he did at Dayton. Most of the offense went through him, but Sean Payton is also high on him as a blocker. Payton said he was one of the better blocking tight ends in this year's draft. But he also wants to line him out wide. He wants to kind of move him around. He won't have to come in and be number one tight end right away. They still have Jared Cook, who put up good numbers last year.
He's going to be 33 though, so
I mean, he also, like we said, he played against lesser competition at Dayton. And he's not so great after the catch. He doesn't have real breakaway speed or agility, but he should come in and be a solid pass catching tight end.
I come from a soccer background, like you do as well. Growing up athletically, and we've always been fans of this sport. And one of the things that translates from me from soccer to football is the ability to win those 50-50 balls. To go up, and if you can win the ball over your opponent, it can just do so much more for your team than when you can't. Obviously. That's an obvious statement I just made. It's like a more in-depth John Madden quote. But when you can win the 50-50 balls, it makes the next percentage catch a lot higher for you. And that's what he does really well, because he got such a big frame. And I think this is great value here in the third round. And with his size at 6'5", he is just yet another weapon for Drew Brees to finish his career off with.
Yeah, it looks like, I think what it looks like is that the Saints are doing everything they can to get Drew Brees another ring, and this probably his last, if not second to last year of his career. So I think that kind of looks like the trend that they're going for this year.
All right, last pick here before we move on, because we've been on this team for a minute, is their fourth pick. The Saints drafted Mississippi State quarterback Tommy Stevens. And what's significant about this is the reports came out right after the draft is that Tommy Stevens obviously was a graduate transfer from Penn State, and Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for Carolina, was working at Penn State before he went to LSU, and they had a connection there. And apparently Stevens' agent had already been kind of talking to Carolina, and it was almost done deal that he was going to get signed to Carolina as an undrafted free agent after they had already made their final pick of the 7th round. And the Saints traded up with the Houston Texans to steal Stevens from Carolina. They, quote unquote, said he was high up on our board and we really liked him. But, I mean, we know what this is. We talked about this in the free agency, breakdown, that teams will sign guys to hurt other teams. Well, that's what they did here. Saints took him. But here's the thing, though. He profiles really well for this team because he is a very good athlete and a decent quarterback. He's got great size, 6'5", 235. I mean, this guy is built to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, it's a 7th round. We'll be real here. But if you have the ability to learn from Drew Brees, I feel like any quarterback that learns from these Hall of Famers gets a boost in my eyes. Just a little bit. We don't got to talk on it much more. I just wanted to say about that. The New Orleans Saints here are going to get a B. I know, same grade as the Falcons. You guys are going to hate that. But however, there's still some minor things that we think the Saints could have done better to get this grade up some more. Having a limited amount of picks hurts. However, getting a steal in Zach Bond helps this grade become a B. All right, let's talk about Brady's team. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right. Tampa Brady Buccaneers.
Tom Brady plays for the Bucs. So if we're talking about the draft, they in the first round at number 13 took Tristan Wirfs, a tackle from Iowa. He was the last of that big four kind of to go.
They moved up one spot to get him.
Oh yeah, they traded up one spot to get Tristan Wirfs. Antoine Winfield, safety from Minnesota. We'll talk about him later. He's the son of Antoine Winfield, who played cornerback for the Vikings back in the day. In the 3rd round, they picked up Keyshawn Vaughn, running back from Vanderbilt. Then in the 5th, Tyler Johnson, wide receiver, another Minnesota player. In the 6th, Khalil Davis is a defensive tackle from Nebraska. And then in the 7th round, they had 2 picks. First, Chappelle Russell, a linebacker from Temple, and then Raymond Calais, running back from University of Louisiana Lafayette.
All right, well, let's start with the Buccaneers here, and let's just go in order. That's what we've been doing. Let's stick to it. Let's talk about that tackle they got to protect Tom Brady, who's going to play for another 6 years now because of this tackle.
Yeah, Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. This guy, he has blazing speed, not just for a tackle, just like blazing speed, period. He's 6'5", 320 pounds, and he runs a 4.85 40. That's insane. He's a crazy athlete. He's also like a champion wrestler at Iowa. So he's feisty and always ready to wrestle around there. He can, like, that speed is best seen on pull plays where he comes around and is leading the running back. And he's out there, like, usually on those plays you see, like, after one block, like, the running back will already have passed him up. But, like, there's a couple of plays where you see Tristan Wirfs going, just shoves a guy out of the way, and then just keeps running, still in front of the running back, shoves another guy out of the way. He kind of reminds me of that one scene from The Blind Side, that movie about Michael Orr. Like, there's that scene where he's in the game and they tell him to just keep playing until he hears a whistle, so he just kind of picks up the defender and just carries him out of bounds and throws him over the fence. That's what Tristan Wirfs reminds me of. Like, he's beastly, he's got amazing strength, amazing speed. He's fast enough to prevent the defender from getting the edge on him at tackle, but he's also quick enough, like, if the defender tries to double back and go to the inside, he's quick enough to prevent him from doing that as well. The main knock that I've seen and that you can see on film is that he's a lot better if he's coming out of a 2-point stance where he's already kind of staggered at an angle. If he's coming out of his 3-point stance, his footwork gets a little sloppy. I'm not going to pretend to be some kind of offensive line guru and know everything about that, but that you can see that does lead to him being a bit off balance coming out of 3-point stance. That's something that could, if you have a good offensive line coach, can easily be fixed by coaching and practice.
Now, here's the thing, is that a lot of times when these guys come out of college and they come to the draft, we always sit here and we're like, this guy is going to be good in the NFL if he does this. Or, like, he might be an NFL caliber player because he has this, and this. And for Tristan Wirfs, like, it's not on that same level, because when I see him, I just think, why is he already not in the NFL? Like, he's that big, that fast, that's maybe one of the scariest things, I think, if I was an NFL player, seeing somebody that big, that fast, running at me to try and knock my block off just so some guy can put a ball in the end zone. Like, he's not even carrying the ball. He's just trying to be a good friend. And, I agree. On pull plays, he is dominant in the run game. With how quick his feet are, his ability to keep up with his running back and keep blocking downfield, that's something that, like, coaches and general managers dream of. Like, obviously, we all love good pancakes. We love pancakes. Sunday morning, 11 o'clock where I'm from, I love pancakes. But the fact that he can deliver hits 10 plus yards down the field after that first block is what separates him from all of the tackles in this class, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just that speed is something you don't see every day on a guy his size.
Now, moving on to the second round, you kind of touched on it, Antoine Winfield Jr., safety out of Minnesota, the University of Minnesota. Just like his father, who was a first-round pick by the Buffalo Bills in 1999, he goes shortly after, not too long, 13th pick in the second round. If this was a 45-team league, he would have been a first-round pick as well. So, but, close enough to his dad. My thing that I like here is that this guy is undersized. Some websites have him at 5'11", some websites have him at 5'9", and he's probably closer to 5'9". Here's the thing. He does not play like he's that small. Like, we were talking about this with other receivers on the Ravens. We were talking about over there with Dunave. And this guy right here plays bigger than he is. He doesn't back down from anybody. You're 6'5" tight end. That's 235 pounds, 240 pounds. I'm going to run right at you and take you out. Like, he's not afraid to go head to head with anybody. On top of that, he's not afraid to go out and make a play. He is a ball hawk. If there was ever one in this draft right now, this guy can track the ball out of the air all day. And I'm a big fan of this guy. He's a sure tackler. I mean, last year he had 88 total tackles, a very high IQ, and I'm going to contribute that to his father. I feel like anybody that has an NFL caliber father and is playing at the college level should have a high IQ, because their dad is just like drilling them with knowledge.
He was probably showing them film before bed instead of reading them bedtime stories.
That's probably what it was. It's probably bedtime film. I'm like, all right, here's this play. Watch this. But right then and there, I mean, he has all this going for him. He has great ball skills. However, he does have a little bit of injury history. He got hurt in 2017 and 2018. He was healthy last year, and obviously it showed because Minnesota was a very good team last year, and he's one of the reasons why they were good. He needs to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he can push for a starting spot in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and another little fun fact for your ears is that his father, Antoine Winfield, intercepted Tom Brady when Tom Brady was first starting back in 2001, I believe. And now, 20-some years later, his son's playing on the same team as Tom Brady. So, Tom Brady, you're old.
He's only going to get to intercept him in training and practice. But, right now, right next to Jordan Whitehead, Justin, I'm a big fan of Justin Evans, safety for the Buccaneers. However, he's kind of struggled with play this past couple of years and everything. It's been something where it's been really underwhelming. However, he's still a good, second round pick from 2017 out of Texas A&M. The Buccaneers have a good three-headed monster here right now at safety. But yeah, Antoine Winfield Jr. is a great, strong safety. He can step up in the box and help out. I think this is a great pick. This is one of my favorite picks of the draft. This is one of my favorite players from the draft. Let's move on. Let's keep going, though. Tampa Bay had some more picks. They were doing more to help out this team. And people have not been a big fan of Ronald Jones. So they decided to go out and get Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, let me tell you, as a Titans fan, I'm subscribed to a lot of Tennessee news stuff on Instagram and stuff like that, Tennessee sports. So I kind of hear about these players from University of Tennessee or Middle Tennessee State or Vanderbilt. So in the third, I've got kind of a soft spot for those players. Not necessarily a University of Tennessee fan by any means, but I kind of hear about these players and I get to know them. So the same thing with the Keyshawn Vaughn is a running back from Vanderbilt. Kind of been following him this year. I did think they could have drafted a running back earlier, but I'm not going to hate on either of the two picks before him. Keyshawn Vaughn is one of those guys who he's not real speedy. He doesn't have elite speed. He's more likely to run through defenders than away from them. He describes his play style as grimy. What he said is, if you're a defender, you're just kind of in my way. If you exist in front of me as a defender, I'm just gonna blow through you. So that's kind of his play style. He also has his role in the passing game has improved each year. In senior year, had 28 catches for almost 300 yards. So he's I think he could come in and contribute. It's hard to find. You're gonna be hard pressed to find a real workhorse running back these days in the NFL. So he can come in and and play alongside Ronald Jones. And I think he'll be a good player for that team.
All right, and last person we're going to talk about here is, we like to cover people from not just days 1 and 2, because that's the easy stuff, and that's what any of you guys can obviously do, because ESPN, NFL, they cover them like crazy. But let's talk about 5th round pick. Let's talk about a guy that I'm a huge fan of. I like this guy a lot, not just because we share the same first name, but because he's so undervalued when it came to all these receiving prospects. And maybe it's because of the class he came in. If Tyler Johnson, who we're going to talk about here, wide receiver from University of Minnesota, came out last year, he wouldn't have been drafted in the 5th round. But this receiver class was extremely deep. And it just shows here that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers potentially got a slot receiver to start for them as their number 3 in the 5th round. Now, Tyler Johnson has a lot of things going for him. He has a lot of things going against him. Let's talk about things that are going against him, and then we'll move on to all the positives. He's not the fastest receiver. He's not very explosive off the line. He struggles when he gets in press coverage in the first 5 yards, which prevents him from getting separation in those man coverage situations. But however, when a team is lined up in zone and he gets a little bit of freedom to run, he eats up those teams in that situation. He has very good, he might be top 3, 4, 5 in this draft at route running. He's a great slot receiver. He can get all those underneath routes you want. And at 6'2", he's only around 200 pounds. He wins 50-50 balls, which if you can win 50-50 balls, which are supposed to be even, and he wins them on a consistent basis, that's what I like to see. Like, I really don't care if you're not the fastest receiver, anything like that. Like, I mean, Mario Manningham had some of the best catches, in the Super Bowl that I've ever seen. And he ran like a sub 4.6. I don't really care if you're not the fastest receiver. But if you can win contested balls and you can run great routes and expose teams when they give you space, that's what I like to see.
Yeah, I kind of sometimes get the feeling if Tyler Johnson had played at like a bigger name school, maybe he would have gotten drafted higher as well. Because I feel like I heard his name, saw him doing great things all year at Minnesota. So I think they got a pretty good value in the 5th round.
Yeah, I see a lot of people comparing him to Corey Davis is the comp I see for some people. And my thing is that a lot of times when we talk about these college players, some things that we like out of them is to have all the professional analysis and draft scouts and draft experts praise these players. And when they do that, we think they're a little bit better. And when they don't talk about them, we think they're not as good. But here's another thing that we like from players, and that we're, for some reason, not talking about enough for Tyler Johnson, is production. I mean, this guy, when he got the starting role as a junior, had 78 catches for over 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns at over 15 yards a catch. And everywhere I'm seeing it tells me this guy isn't going to get you yards after the catch, ever. But he had a 52-yard bomb that he had that year. In 2019, he had 86 catches for 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, still over 15 per catch, and he had a 73-yard bomb. So I think that his production and his ability to produce at a place like Minnesota in the Big Ten, which is supposed to have very good defenses, so I would argue they're probably like the number 2 defensive conference in the nation, if not number 1. But I know everybody loves the SEC. I think this guy is going to be better in the NFL than everybody leading up to the draft was talking about.
Yeah, and don't forget Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady loves his slot receivers. Like, he Wes Welker type, like the Julian Edelman when he lines up in the slot.
But bigger. But he's bigger. That's the thing.
Yeah. So I mean, he should catch plenty of passes this year from Tom Brady. So I think that him plus Evans and Godwin on the outside with Gronk, that team is going to be terrifying in the passing game.
A B in between plus? No. All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you guys get a B plus. Very good draft. Did some good things here. I like I like everything they kind of did from the first, second, and fifth round. The other draft picks, I think, were luxury picks where they kind of filled a little bit of need here or there. Nothing's really standing out for me. I'm not a huge Keyshawn Vaughn fan, but I'm not discrediting him. But let's move on to the final team in this division. Let's move on to our division winners. The division winners are the Carolina Panthers. This team did something very historic, something that's never been done with the team that's had at least 7 draft picks. And why don't you talk about this record they broke or this feat they made?
Well, the record they broke is actually, I was kind of surprised that it hadn't been done before. They're the first team in the modern era that's after the merger to draft with at least 7 picks, to draft all of those picks at defense. And I remember this was something that you had talked about before the draft. Like you were saying, you think they should go all defense this year, then focus on offense next year. So that was kind of a Nostradamus type of experience talking to you about that. So in the first round, at the 7th pick, they drafted Derek Brown. That was kind of expected. A lot of people had him going there, defensive tackle from Auburn. In the second round, they had 2 picks. The first one being Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State, defensive end, edge rusher. With this 64th pick, still in the second round, they got Jeremy Chin, who's a safety, defensive back from Southern Illinois. In the 4th, Troy Pride Jr., cornerback from Notre Dame. 5th round, Kenny Robinson, safety from the XFL. In the 6th round, Bravion Roy is a defensive tackle from Baylor. And then in the 7th, Stanley Thomas Oliver, the 3rd cornerback from Florida International. Why don't you start us off, Tyler?
Well, let's talk about Derek Brown. And I was saying that Carolina Panthers were in a great spot this year because they're going to benefit from getting one of the best players in the draft if 3 quarterbacks go ahead of time. And let's talk about what we were talking about, how I said they were going to go all defense would be the best thing they could do, and I hope they do. And, you know, I'm not always right. I like to think I'm always right.
Usually you're not.
However, when I am right, I'm pretty humble about it, I think.
So humble.
So, all of you for doubting me and everything. No, this draft was ideal. Like I said, when we were talking about our off-season breakdown of what they did, the Carolina Panthers lost like 11 to 13 starters. Like a lot of people. It depends on if you count special teams captains and whatnot, and Colin Jones. But on that defensive line, and I know everybody was saying they need Isaiah Simmons because they just lost Luke Kuechly. So when you lose a player, you draft the same position that draft immediately because that's what you have to do. Okay, well, the Carolina Panthers lost like 4 of 6 defensive linemen this year. They really were only bringing back, for impact players, K'Wan Short, who's been hurt the past couple of years, and rookie Brian Burns going into his second year. So they needed more presence there. You know, losing McCoy, losing Butler. They lost Lotulelei, who was a great run stuffer for him a couple years ago. They lose Mario Addison off the edge. They lose Bruce Irving off the edge. You know, losing these guys, Wes Horton retired. These things are not good for a team to lose this and try and be consistent. The Carolina Panthers have always been known to be one of the best teams at getting to the quarterback. They get sacks every year. Even if they're a bad team that finishes with 5-11, they still find a way to get 45 plus sacks. Well, now they're going to get back up over 50 because a guy like Derek Brown is going to eat up space. He's going to stuff the run, which Carolina was terrible last year. They were 29th in yards allowed per game last year in the rush. He's going to be able to bring that number down. Even if slightly, he's going to bring it down, and it's going to be positive for this team, which means he's going to eat up double teams, which means guys like Brian Burns, you know, is going to be able to eat on the outside. Same with YGM on the opposite side, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. This pick might have been predictable, but he was still a top 3 talent in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, and Derek Brown, he's gonna have an impact right away. Like, this is a guy that you can't just put one one lineman on him and call it good. You got to double team him. And he's been touted as this like elite run stuffer, but don't forget he can also rush the passer. He's not going to get a lot of sacks, but he does get pressure, and he also will free up other guys to come in and get sacks, like you said. So, I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer at that pick, and I think it was the right pick.
I mean, there was a time a couple years ago where Carolina was on like, it was like 26 or 27 games in a row without allowing a 100-yard rusher. And then everything just kind of went downhill once they did. And that was in 2018. And this team needs to get back to being what they've been since the better part of the 2000s. I mean, ever since they drafted Chris Jenkins in 2001 and Julius Peppers in 2002, I've always thought of Carolina to have a dominant defensive line. That's what I've always thought of as a fan growing up. Let's move to the second round pick. And they ended up staying on the defensive line and addressing another need and giving Brian Burns, a 1-2 partner in crime.
Yeah, they picked up Yetur Gross-Matos, edge rusher from Penn State. This was a guy who was kind of projected by a lot of people to go towards the end of the first round there, maybe to the Seahawks or to the Titans. He's good. He has a good value in the second. He's good at rushing the edge. Fits better as a 4-3 defensive end. He's got great athleticism. Still kind of needs to work on the technical side of things, but that's something that, of course, you can always improve your technique and your skill. It's a lot harder to improve raw athleticism. So I think he has a very high ceiling, and I think he'll come in and be a good fit on the defense. What did you think about him?
I'm happy with this. I'm happy with it. He's pretty athletic. He has really good effort and close down speed, good pursuit. Can be a problem for guards when he kicks inside, which is something that I really like. I mean, I get everybody wants those edge rushers to just like go on the outside like Von Miller every time and Khalil Mack and just be able to beat a guy every time around the edge. But I'm a fan of those guys that can like 50-50 and kick inside and be just as dominant inside as they are outside. I think this is great. And we're going to keep talking about this. Like I said, they kept losing players. Well, while you were talking, I just pulled up a stat so I could make sure I was right on this. Last year, Carolina had 7 players with over 3 sacks each, which is pretty decent. Only one of those guys is returning in 2020. So that just kind of reinforces what I'm saying. Carolina's first pick, they got a starter at defensive tackle right next to K'Wan Short. Second round pick, they get a starter. YGM is going to start right across from Brian Burns. Their front four, in my eyes, is settled. And in 2-3 years, this is going to look like a really good, dangerous front four. But let's keep moving. They passed on Isaiah Simmons at pick 7, but they might have gotten 2.0 version, the lesser version.
Yeah, we're talking about Jeremy Chin. He was their second round pick. They actually traded up to get him. They traded the Seahawks a third and a fifth to jump back in the second round and get him. This is a guy that, I feel like in the week or two leading up to the draft, he just kind of shot up draft boards. Some people had him going even in the beginning of the second round. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. He ran a 4.45 40. He's physical, he's super aggressive. I mean, he comes and he likes to lay the smack down on plays. Like, he's very strong. He played in at a smaller school again against a bit lesser competition, but he shows on film how good he is. Not as great in man coverage, but I think he projects well as a strong safety in Carolina. He should come in and do some damage.
See, what I like about this is that, well, 2 things. Let's touch on that trade. They gave a 5th round pick. That 5th round pick was the one they received from the Washington Redskins in their trade for Kyle Allen, a player that they were never going to keep, and they only were re-signing to a 1-year deal to trade. So in my eyes, they moved up for free because it was an extra pick. He was expendable once they signed Teddy Bridgewater. Jeremy Chin can play just like Isaiah Simmons, multiple positions. He's 6'3". He's a little long, and he's heavy. He's like 220 pounds. He's a little long and heavy to play cornerback, but he can. He's pretty good in coverage. He can definitely play safety if that's where they want to go. But they got another guy later on in the draft that I think can profile there. I think this guy is going to be moved around a lot, and he's going to be able to step up in packages and play linebacker. Now, I'm going to stay true to this. Just because I'm a Panthers fan doesn't mean I'm going to go away from it. I want him to find a position. I get it, sub packages move up and everything when they pull up the nickel and everything. Yeah, come on up and everything. But I want him to find a true position and dominate that position because he's an athlete. And again, I'm going to just, maybe I'm being a homer here and correct me if I'm wrong. Please put me in place. Carolina just got a third starter right here. They just released Eric Reed. They signed Trey Boston. They only got one starter at safety. So right now, in my eyes, they got 3 starters with their first 3 picks.
Yeah, I definitely think that their first 3 picks, all 3 of those guys should be starting right away.
At pick 113, 4th round, they got cornerback Troy Pride Jr. out of the University of Notre Dame, 6 foot tall, 193 pounds. Above average speed. He's on that edge of 6 foot plus. So it's just what you want. He's got great top end speed. He's a really good zone coverage cornerback. He can play out. He's going to play outside in the NFL. He's very athletic and has great ball skills, and he has really good instincts. Now, those good ball skills and those good instincts come hindered and ball chained with the fact that the reason why he has such good play on the ball is the fact that he's always looking at the quarterback. But that can be his hindrance in the NFL. Because as we say, these quarterbacks in the NFL are not just one step up from the college quarterbacks that they're playing against. These guys are like 5-6 steps above those college quarterbacks. And if you get caught staring at the quarterback for too long, a wide receiver is going to hot route out, find another way to go, and a quarterback's going to be able to read that. Like a very good quarterback is going to break that down. And that's part of his problem. He's also not very physical in coverage. He doesn't press very well, but he does a lot of things really well to play for this team. Will he start? That's a question because Carolina's depleted at cornerback. They have Dante Jackson. So potentially. Okay, let's talk about the last guy. And now I know we're talking about Carolina a lot here, and that could be biased from the host. But we actually have a guy here that got drafted in the 5th round that we're both a fan of, because we are former St. Louis Battlehawk fans.
No, we're not former fans. We're fans for life. My blood bleeds St. Louis Battlehawks blue.
Since the day we were born.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's have you go in depth on this. An XFL player entered the draft and got drafted. Interesting, because XFL players were signing as free agents. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the vast majority of XFL players signed with the XFL either after having not been drafted or being drafted not making a team, or they were veterans who had kind of flamed out of the NFL and then came down to play in the XFL, like Josh Johnson and Landry Jones and players like that. Kenny Robinson was interesting in that he was kicked off the team at West Virginia for academic reasons. His main choice was to transfer, sit out a year, and then play again. But for a number of reasons, he didn't want to do that. I know his mother was battling cancer at the same time. There's also a problem with he owed the school money, so they wouldn't release his transcript. So he was like, F that, I'm going to go to my own league with blackjack and hookers, went to the XFL. He actually balled out for the Battlehawks. He was one of their best players. He was a good safety back then in the defensive backfield. And it paid off. I mean, he got paid then. I mean, not a whole lot. But that was enough for him to get drafted in the 5th round by the Carolina Panthers. And I mean, I think it was a really smart move by him. I mean, he gambled on himself, and he won.
Yeah, and it worked out. I mean, at West Virginia in his 2 years there, he had 7 interceptions. Last year for the XFL for the Battlehawks, he picked off 2 passes in the 5 games he played in. 6 games he played in, and he had 21 total tackles. He had a sack as well in the XFL there, and he's a really good in the run support. He has some good power on him. He still, in my eyes, needs to work on cleaning up his technique a little bit, especially in coverage, and he needs to focus on wrapping up a little bit better when he tackles. He kind of just goes for the arm tackles a little bit, and I think that's because he believes in himself a lot, which we see that from these young guys. And and that just comes from like his sporadic play and how he's kind of all over the place. And it's just like a coin. Like you're flipping a coin. Like because he's so sporadic when he plays, he's either going to make a highlight play for your team or somebody's going to break a tackle on him because he's not focused in his technique of his feet when he goes to, extend for that tackle and explode. He doesn't get his hips under and wrap up. But I'm rooting for this guy, not just because he's a Panther, but I mean, his story is real. It's something that everybody deals with. Not everybody goes to college and is a star athlete and graduates and does well in school. There are normal people out there that fail out.
Yeah, it's hard not to root for him. He's a really cool story, and I hope he does well.
Alrighty, and that's going to do it for our Carolina Panthers draft review. If we're going to give them a grade, they won the division, and the Buccaneers got a B+, so the Panthers get a little bit higher. They get an A. They didn't have the best draft to get an A+, but they did better than everybody else in their division in our eyes, and they filled 4 starting spots, and they got 3 guys that can either come in and potentially be a starter, or at least 1 guy in Kenny Robinson, and then 2 bench players that can come up and be nice role players for this team. Matt Rule came in, and he's this offensive guy that is, and you bring in Joe Brady, who's this big offensive, guy that loads all these weapons, and they go all defense, and it makes a statement to the NFL that they understand where their position is, and they're going to get better now. They're not waiting. And that is going to do it for the NFC South 2020 draft breakdown, grades, evaluation, what we liked and didn't like. If you guys are liking our content right here, click that subscribe button at the bottom right. Stay tuned for all episodes we got going on. This is number 5 of our draft grades. So if you want to hear what we had to say about the other teams, click on over at the icon at the top right. It'll give you the whole playlist for you. And that's going to do it. Thank you guys for coming on out. You guys have a good night.
Shout out to our little baby Cody who just had his 29th birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Cody. We love you.
He's evolving into a man.
It is, right before our eyes.